Aflag and Praise TV proudly present Rights in Focus with Aflag.
Hello and good evening, viewers. Welcome to Rights in Focus with Aflag. Today, we are going to look at a very critical issue, an issue that affects individuals, families, communities, and the society at large. And the topic is gender-based violence and the law. Now, we are going to dive into what gender-based violence is and how the law is protecting us. We are going to dissect into the Domestic Violence Act of 2007 that Ghana has. We are going to see whether the gaps that is existing between the cultural issues and the legal issues as far as gender-based violence is concerned has been dealt with by the law, and whether its implementation has been smooth or it still faces a lot of challenges. When we talk about gender-based violence, we are not just talking about physical abuse. We are looking at emotional abuse. We are looking at psychological abuse, and even one of the major things, economic abuse. To help me do this are two experts who have been working as far as women issues are concerned, gender issues are concerned, law, divorce, and everything. Now, moving to my guest, we have with me lawyer Edwin Kwesi Appiah. He is a known family law expert, a family law lawyer who has dealt with so many divorces and really understands divorce and the tangent that goes as far as women and men are concerned when it comes to family law. He's also a commercial law expert and a general practitioner, but then today we are going to focus on his expertise as far as family law is concerned. Thank you and welcome, Lawyer Kwesi.
Thank you.
We also have with us Madam Deborah Tayo Akakpo. Please, I've mentioned the Akakpo very well. Yes. Madam Deborah Tayo Akakpo. She's a feminist, a very passionate gender-based violence activist. She's an expert, and she's been doing this for close to 30 years, if not more than 30 years. She understands the terrain of gender-based violence and how it affects women. She's here with so many practical, examples to give us and help us understand, particularly the cultural barriers that we face. She's also an international expert as far as this is concerned. She's traveled the world to talk and educate and, make a lot of input into policies that affect women. Luckily, I'm with her on the affirmative action bill, all that we went through to finally see the success of the affirmative action bill come into. Of course, it's not what we expected. A few things were taken out, but it's better than nothing. Welcome to today's episode on gender-based violence and the law.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so let me start with Lawyer Kwesi. Yes. Now, we want to know what is the Domestic Violence Act first? Or I should start ladies first.
Anything goes.
Okay, so let me start with Madam Deborah. Madam Deborah, please tell us what is gender-based violence. Explain it to us. What is gender-based violence?
Okay, thank you very much. When we talk about gender-based violence, we are looking at the human rights abuses that, is prescribed to a specific gender, maybe because of their makeup. And so when we talk about gender-based violence, we are looking in this particular instance, it could be a man, it could be a boy, it could be a woman, it could be a girl. Yeah. But with the kinds of abuses, human rights abuses that we see, then we are looking more towards women and girls. So gender-based violence is as a result of maybe sociocultural norms and practices that are going on, stereotypes that are ascribed to what a woman or man should be, and it's as a result of that, the expectations that are not met, that results in gender-based violence. And some of the forms that gender-based violence can take is, you've mentioned some of them already. You talked about the physical, we have the sexual, we have the psychological, we have the economic, and for us in Ghana, we have the traditional violence as well. So these are the various forms that they can take. And also within these 5 types that I've mentioned, then you have maybe child marriage. You have forced child marriage. That is, some people see it as a culture it's their tradition for girls to be married, let's say, as early as 9 years. You have the chokoshi, you have the widowhood practices that are harmful. There are some widowhood practices that are, okay. But then we are talking about the harmful cultural practices. We are talking about, of course, femicide, we don't really do that much in our parts of the world. But then we are talking about femicide. So we are talking about quite a number of things that can happen to women and girls as a result of the expectations that society have of us, which are not met. So basically, somebody will say, why do we even have gender-based violence in the first place? It's as a result of patriarchy.
Okay, so hold it there. We will get into that.
Oh, okay, sure.
We'll get into that. Lawyer Edwin, please tell us, walk us through the Domestic Violence Act of 2007.
Okay, so the Domestic Violence Act was Ghana's response to the gender-based violence that has been there. And like Madam said, it was more pointed at women and children who are more vulnerable in society. But we realized there were some laws that Ghana had before the Domestic Violence Act.
Okay, what are
some institutions, that were, if you take Waju, for instance, it was juvenile and women.
Women, yeah.
So essentially it excluded men, because in the past the understanding against of gender-based violence was that it was only perpetrated against women and children, and that men could not have been victims. But if you take the Domestic Violence Act, it looks at every person, every gender, because indeed some men suffer violence or abuse from their spouses as well. So the Domestic Violence Act is Ghana's response to gender-based violence. And if you look at the act does very important things. The first one is that it criminalizes the gender-based violence in itself. It criminalizes that act. So the acts of there are some acts, physical abuse, which it becomes naturally criminal.
Yeah.
And other things that the act sees that this is a criminal, has a criminal enterprise to it, it criminalizes it. It brings about certain institutions like DOFSU, so everybody knows that, okay, when such an occurrence happens, I can go to the police station and they can direct me to DOFSU.
Unity.
The act brings about things like protection orders, where the court, a person who has been abused can go to the court and say, please help protect me.
Okay.
And the court can make an order that can either prevent the perpetrator from coming close to the person, living in the same house with the person. And in some instances, a victim, even if the perpetrator, let's say, is a husband, taking the person out of the place.
Okay, before I move to Madam Deborah, let me look at one thing I loved is the fact that you made us know that there were existing laws. However, the existing laws were just centered on women and juvenile children. But this the Gender-Based Violence Act is actually inclusive. It includes men, and that's what we always talk about, inclusivity. So that's a very good one. Now, to talk about how the law protects victims. With all of this, do you think that the law is actually protecting victims? Because we have instances recently. There was an incident in Nungwa where the court actually placed an injunction, a restraining order on the man. They got home. The man, in trying to pack his things to leave the house, just entered, took a gun, and shot the wife. And shot the mother-in-law. It was recorded. We all heard it. And left the children. So do you think in this instance, the law actually protected the woman?
That's the thing with the law. The law comes to serve as a deterrent. The law comes to serve as a source of punishment. But the actions of individuals are theirs.
Yeah.
When the court made the restraining order, you can tell that the court foresaw that there is a possibility of danger.
Which they wanted to stop.
But that gentleman decided that I am going to flout the laws. I'm going to do that which is wrong, and he will face the consequences. So those things happen. But whenever a law is made or laws are made, the point of making those laws is to address the problems that come about. And sometimes they may not address all of them, but at least they will attempt to do so.
It mitigates it a bit.
A bit. One of the key things when you look at this law is that it makes it very broad. It describes the relationship that you can have with a person under which you can go and say that I have suffered some domestic violence. It can be your husband or your wife. It can be your boyfriend or your girlfriend.
Yeah.
You may not be having any sexual relationship with a person. You are just courting or something. But the law will still protect you. And now it even expands it to a work relation, where some employees have been abused by their employers, you know. So and it goes as far as to uncles blood relation, where you can say that, oh, what has happened is it's more like a family matter, can all be brought under the Domestic Violence Act, and say that this person has done this to me, which amounts to domestic violence, and therefore the law should take its course.
Great. Madam Deborah, what are some of the root causes of gender-based violence? And for me, how does culture and societal norms in Ghana tie into that? Also, right after that, I want us to give us some practical experiences, okay, that you can use to substantiate this.
Okay, thank you. I was going to talk about the almighty patriarchy that, has played a critical role in gender-based violence. And somebody will say, what is patriarchy? It is that assumption that authority lies in the bosom of men.
Completely vested.
It talks about authority being imposed in men, such that they dictate what happens. They dictate the relationship within the home. They dictate the relationship within society. And patriarchy says that any kind of power, position, authority is solely aligned to men. So a woman is not supposed to have anything. And so this has ruled over the years our actions in terms of what we do, and it has become like a stereotype. Okay. So because of that, even so, the way society is structured is based on patriarchy. So society believes that the place of a woman is in the kitchen, must be seen and not heard, must be subservient. The place of the man is to be the head. He should hold the family together. He is the strength. He is the, So society has assigned roles because of patriarchy. Yeah. So there is an expected responsibility from, if you're a woman, what is expected of you. If you're a man, what is expected of you? And this has transcended into our culture. Yeah. So culturally, you even see that even within the home setting, it is expected that the woman would be the caregiver. The woman will play reproductive roles, and then the man will play the productive roles. Yeah. So the productive roles being go out, bring money, ensure that we are safe. And then the reproductive role of the woman is the caregiver, doing the unpaid care work, making sure that the children are fed, extended families are taken care of, and all of that. And so as a result of that, whenever we are doing trainings on domestic gender-based violence, one thing we like to do is to draw a box and tell the participants, act like a man, act like a woman. So you see them, some people sweeping, some people playing football, some people doing that. And then when we are done, we'll ask them, all what you've written, all what you've done, write them within the box. Then you tell them, if somebody goes outside of this box or does something that is not within this box, what happens? Mm-hmm. Society frowns on that person. Yeah. Society begins to see, maybe if a woman decides that, I don't want to necessarily be only in the kitchen, but I also want to play productive roles. Yeah. Society begins to see you as domineering. You are too assertive, you are disobedient, you are not a wife material, and all of that. So you see that and then you ask them, wow, how did you even begin to realize that you are a man, you're a woman, and certain things, you have to do them? And then we ask them, go back to when you were a child. At what point in time did you realize that you were different from your brother or your sister? And people will tell you, when I wanted to help my sister to wash. My grandmother was like, oh no.
Let me interject. My son's school, a very good, school, modern day school, let me say that a big kind of school, modern day school, which you wouldn't expect. Cambridge system, but guess what? When they go for their buffet, what is buffet? Lunch. Oh, when they go for lunch, buffet is what? Serve yourself. Guess what? I got to realize he's currently in grade 7. I got to realize in grade 6 that when they go for buffet, some of the teachers tell them that the guys shouldn't serve, the women, the girls. So it's the girls. So maybe today they'll select 3 or 4 girls in the class to stand at the buffet side and serve them. And I'm like, are you kidding? Oh, but mommy, it's normal. It's women that are supposed to serve. I'm like, what?
Yes.
So something we are trying to fight. That dishing out your food, how is it a woman? And they've already started teaching them. So it's like this fight we are fighting for. When will it end? This is just to add on to what you are saying.
Yes, exactly. And so you see the stereotypes.
Yeah.
It's like it's expected. So a woman is supposed to do that. And as I was saying, you ask them and somebody says, oh, I wanted to help my sister to wash at the age of 6. And my grandmother was like, oh no, Emma dear, what dear, kwana kobo football, kwana kotina senashwe TV, Emma mukase, you see. So already right from as they are going, the socialization.
So we don't blame men for that. We blame women. We blame ourselves.
It's not only the women.
Do you understand? We blame the women.
You don't blame. A family is made up of both the man and the woman.
Okay.
So you don't blame the woman.
Yeah.
It behoves on both parties, the man and the woman, to be role models for their children. So if the child sees what you practice in the home is what the child is going to grow up with. In my home, there is nothing like boys cannot cook, girls cannot cook. My husband will call my son and say, prepare dinner for me. We'll call my daughter and say, oh, come and do this. There is nothing like roles that are ascribed to men. Of course, maybe because of the background we are coming from, we are very conscious about ensuring that we don't repeat those stereotypes for them. Okay. But this is how society is. And because of that, culturally, a lot of things are frowned on. Why is it that all these witchcraft accusations, why is it only a woman who can be a witch? Yeah. Why is it that when things are not going right, they say it is the woman's fault?
And abuse, the torture
that they take them through. Yeah. Why is it that, why are boys not forced into marriage? Yeah. But it is a girl who is forced into marriage. Because the assumption is that a woman has to be spoken for. She cannot speak
for herself.
So these are all the cultural practices that, as a result of patriarchy, men being in a position of power and authority, have you realized that anybody who has power, let's say, for example, you have power, you are, a headmistress, or you are in a position of authority, and one day they come and say, oh,
share it with somebody.
No, relinquish a bit of that power. How do you feel?
No.
Yes. So realistically, we all know that it's always very difficult for you to relinquish power, and that has been, the struggle. But we are saying that culturally, our practices, we have certain cultural practices that are, are make us better. But then we also have harmful social-cultural practices.
Now, do you think that we've made progress as far as gender-based violence is concerned, the cultural barriers we face? Do you think we've made some form of progress?
We've made progress in terms of making people aware that it's not right. We've made progress, of course, with the coming in of the Domestic Violence Act 732. Yeah. I remember when we hit the streets in 2005, 2006, we went on demonstrations. We did everything to get the president, to pass that law. Because as soon as we came back from Beijing, that was 30 years ago, it became something that needed to be done. As a result of all the conversations that went on, that there was a need for us to have a law. I remember that...
let me move, because you mentioned the Beijing and all of those, international treaties and everything. Let me get back to Lawyer Edwin again. Yes. So Ghana has signed on to a lot of international treaties. Yes. Okay, we know that when you sign on to these international treaties, you need to bring it down ratify it and everything. Now, how do you think that these international treaties, have strengthened Ghana's fight against gender-based violence, particularly CEDAW?
The thing with treaties are that the moment you sign on to them, you want to live up to them. Yeah. In fact, you discover that some of the laws we have been had because we signed on to
the treaties,
certain treaties. And above that, the countries that usually host these treaties, and I use the word host because they are always supervising countries that are looking to make sure that certain countries fall in
abide.
They sometimes make these conditionalities for debts and loans, and sometimes even officials traveling, and because they always want to see that human abuse or human rights are followed. So all of that come to play and help so that when you make the local laws, most of the local laws, when you look at them critically and you compare with the treaties, you discover that there's so much, they are so similar.
The similarities are a lot.
I want to add, the thing with patriarchy is it has been a lot of, it has harmed us a lot. But the problem with it is that it has been also a structure that all of us have operated since tradition.
Yeah.
So it is not something that can be wished away.
Yeah.
Because whenever you take away patriarchy, you discover that in there, roles are being played as well. Some men will argue that the same way, sometimes there's the argument that the woman is literally confined to the kitchen. Yeah. The same way a man is also made to bring money.
Confined to bringing money.
Money, whether he has it or not. And they may not like that. Well, no man likes that, I am sure.
They feel the pressure is too much. They feel society has given them so much pressure.
So when we talk about patriarchy, it is a problem.
So let me digress a bit. So since men have a problem with that, there's so much, pressure on them to bring the money. Why are men not ready to also share that productive role with women so that we can come in and help you bring the money?
Because traditionally, that is all a lot of men know. And just like that is all a lot of women know.
So
to
ask
the husband. I'm not saying every woman is like that. There are a lot of families where the women actually even give more than the men. And you may find occasionally men who are also doing well in terms of helping in the house and all of that. But when you have an entire society that has been bred in a certain way, it is very difficult to change that mindset unless you begin to hit at people individually and providing laws that looks at individual character. Because you see, the patriarchy can be there, but the things that we will consider as violence literally has nothing to do with the patriarchy, but the person's character. Yes, because if you are emotionally abusing someone, you are physically abusing someone. Yeah. You are economically depriving someone. Yeah. You will find no place within this in the patriarchy, strictly speaking. Yeah. Except that you can say that that individual in there feels that he does not, by his nature or by his upbringing, feels that a woman should not be entitled. So let's take the abuses individually. Let's take physical abuse. Any man or any woman that can actually hit his wife is a terrible human being. And nobody, I dare say, within our culture, within our fabric, within our religious setup, will encourage a man or a woman to hit their partner.
But some religions allow it. Yes, there's a religion.
I beg to differ.
I don't want us to mention religions.
I beg to differ.
But there's a religion that permits a man. They call it, you are correcting your woman. And that is why I have a question, because how are you correcting your wife? Your wife is your partner. Your wife is not your child. Like, my dad is done correcting me. So let's work together. If you have issues with me, try to, help me, support me. Oh, Miss Nupe, this aspect of your life, I think we should change. Dad, I think your dad didn't do well in this regard. Let me help you. But not cane me.
No, but I understand that. Maybe I made it too broad. But within that religion or religious setup, there's the bigger law, which is the state
protects you, the state's law
protects you.
Yeah.
So even if your religion allows you at any given time to beat up your wife, and people will argue that that's not what the religion says. There are caveats to it, but let's not go into that. We'll digress. The argument is that there's the bigger law, which may give you a criminal charge, which is assault.
Yeah.
And if you are is unfortunate and you hurt the person grievously, you can be charged for harm. We can send you to jail for more than 10 years. You see, so it is not sometimes if emotional abuse. You can see that.
So for the family abuse, you see, family comes in and the police are also not helping matters. You take it to the police and then family comes in, mommy and Francofi, and then they cover it up.
The problem I have found with us Ghanaians is that we want it all, but we are not willing to sacrifice and get it done.
Okay, how do you mean?
Let me give you an example. Everyone will say that the police is not acting well, they are not being vigilant, whatever.
Yeah.
But let there be an issue and the police be adamant that the family has come, that they want to negotiate, and the police says no. Everyone will say
the police are
it's a matter. You see, and I think that has hurt us a lot, because a lot of
as
times,
a country,
perpetrators get away with it. In the Western world, they will use, especially when you're a popular person, they're going to use you as an example, a scapegoat, so that anybody else becomes afraid that, hey, if even Mike Tyson can go to jail, then who am I? You get it? Over here, whenever there's
so we are really behind in that regard.
Yeah, we are behind. And everyone, no matter who, people will say, oh, we'll do this. Let the matter begin. And you see, they'll send their hometown chief or somebody within government or somebody to come and beg or come and influence. And it goes nowhere. So a lot of people have suffered because of that. Let me keep quiet. Forgive me.
Okay.
So
let me, I want to touch a bit on, in 1997, my organization, the Gender Center, conducted the first nationwide study on violence against women and children.
Okay.
That was after the Beijing platform, and women came back and started talking about violence against women. All these foreign concepts they are bringing. So they said, okay, there is a need for evidence.
So women were actually saying that to you.
And there was a nationwide study, the first ever in Ghana, conducted by the Gender Studies and Human Rights Documentation Center where I work, to find out, do we really have violence against women in Ghana? And we'll be amazed at the findings.
This show is brought to you by Aflag, Praise TV, and Oriental Resort Hotel.